Welcome to the 12th Scouching Report. This week we're going to be looking at Flint Firebirds left winger Ethan Keppen, ranked 74th in North America by NHL Central Scouting. I'm going to try to get through this whole video without saying the words power forward starting now. Ethan Keppen is a large, strong, offensive winger who plays for one of the worst teams that I've ever watched play hockey relative to the level they play in, the Flint Firebirds. Flint spent the first half of this season horrendous, and even in the back 30 games of the season, they won only 10 games. Needless to say, it was not a season worth writing home about, but Keppen was once upon a time a top OHL draft pick, and throughout this whole season, he was a ray of sunlight on a really awful OHL team. So if this is your first Scouching report, the way that we look at a player is we look at 5 different categories: think, move, get, pass, and shoot. Within each one of those categories, we assign a number and a letter grade, where the number indicates the peak tier of talent that I see out of that player in that given skill, and the letter indicates the overall level of consistency within that skill that I see. So to get things started, we look at the think category, which is basically how Ethan Keppen perceives the game as it goes on around him. Let me say this: Ethan Keppen is never far away from the puck, and he's never really out of the play. For a winger, he's extremely responsible, back-checking deep into his own zone while also monitoring up near the blue line traditionally like a winger should. He really knows how to patrol the defensive zone and really knows how to fetch loose pucks if he sees them, and again, on a team that isn't great, he really stands out as one of the more responsible players when he's on the ice. In the offensive zone, he's a relentless driver to the net. He will push extremely hard to do what he can to move pucks in a positive direction, and I think that's something that a lot of coaches and scouts are going to really like about his game. He's both effective up the middle of the ice and also along the boards, so he does bring a really interesting skill set that brings a lot of variety, and it's really interesting to watch. He almost plays like a center at times when he's on the ice. Now, he can lose track of forecheckers, leave a man wide open, which can result in goals against, and that was relatively common with the team as a whole, but I do think that his overall mentality is really promising. He really knows how to play the right way, and I think there's going to be a lot to like moving forward. So in the think category, I'm giving Keppen a 1C. There's a lot to like here. It was really easy with Keppen to see the forest through the trees and isolate him as a player. He's very responsible at all times on the ice, rarely putting himself out of position. He can be a bit lazy on back checks from time to time, but about 90% of the time, I really liked how this guy plays hockey. Next up, we have the move category, and I've had a few people tell me that this is where Keppen's game kind of falls apart, and I can't help but disagree with that assessment. I think Keppen skates really well for someone his size. He's not the biggest guy, standing about 6'2" or 6'3". He's pretty heavy, but he does skate really well with really good edge work, and he can get up the ice really effectively. When he was on the ice, he was often relied upon as the guy to transition pucks up the ice, and most of the time he did it with control, and that was really promising to see. And he did it with speed, not just his size and not just his strength. Across all the games I saw, I don't think he took a single shift off. If he did, it really wasn't that noticeable. His motor is just constantly running, and it's really good to watch, and I think whoever drafts him will really like that about his game. Keppen constantly applies tremendous pressure on defenses and is always making forecheckers make plays to get around him or move pucks to someone else, which to me is often a recipe for turning pucks around up the ice. Now, translating that to the next level can be tough for some players. A relentless motor can cause injuries or put yourself out of position in higher speed situations, but with Keppen, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it goes with him. But if I'm a coach, I really think he's the type of person who's going to get plenty of rope to help improve that as time goes by. He's not a tremendously skilled player with the puck, but when you combine the skill he does have with the strength he has, he can really bulldoze his way through offenses with speed. It's really enticing to see, and I think that there is a role for players like that in the National Hockey League. He can fight off opponents skating in a straight line, but I do think his agility will need some work over the years, but again, that's something that's very easily coachable. So in the move category, I'm giving Keppen a 2A. Like I said, I don't think I caught him taking a shift off across the entire 7-game stretch I tracked him in. The kid has a relentless motor, and he's constantly relied upon as the point man for transitioning pucks up the ice on a really bad team, and he wasn't often paired with the best line mates. He can fight off opponents with his strength and beat them with speed, but I do think that if he's going to hit a real high-level gear, he's going to need to put a bit more tools in his toolbox for him to pull out, especially with regards to his skill and his agility if he's going to be a real premier talent in the NHL. Next up is the get category, and this is by far Keppen's best skill. He's going to be the type of player you can just put on the ice and just rely upon to create turnovers and apply pressure on forecheckers. He just plays the game the right way, and to me, it was a joy to watch. He can grind pucks out along the boards, pin guys against the boards, and he can really cause a lot of havoc for forecheckers and apply a lot of pressure, which forces them to make decisions which are often not the right ones. He chases loose pucks really well, and in his own end, he positions himself really well to start breakouts under control with the puck, and on a team like Flint, that was vital. Flint's defense created a lot of holes in their own end, but Keppen was always a focal point for stopping breakouts before they happen and back-checking hard to prevent high danger chances against. It didn't always work, but he does show the right mentality with how to play the game in all areas of the ice. So in the get category, I'm giving Keppen a 1B. He was an absolute standout when he was away from the puck, applies pressure relentlessly, and really forces opponents to make decisions that aren't always the best decisions to make. It was really refreshing to see a player like that on a team that struggled so much like Flint. Some games were much better than others, but the relentless pressure that Keppen brought pushed him to well above a 55% shot attempt differential on a team that got filled in and night out. Next up is the pass category. Now here's where things could come a little bit of a ways with Keppen. He's a capable passer, and he does show flashes of being really creative with the puck, but he drives a lot more offense on his own stick, driving to the net, making that shot from really close in tight or passing it off to a teammate in tight and getting points that way. He's not going to stop up at the wing and set up a play, let a play develop around him. He can chip in on a power play, but in terms of his offensive game, his pass isn't really a focal point. He made more safe plays than dangerous plays, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and he did prefer to transition pucks up the ice under control, whether the puck was on the ice passed to a teammate or on his own stick. It was really nice to see a player in the OHL really try to push controlled entries and exits like Keppen did. So while I didn't really see a lot of decisions where I was left scratching my head in terms of pass selection, there weren't a lot of real high-end tools that I can really speak to. And on a bad team like Flint, not having glaring issues moving the puck is something to write home about. To me, there were some players on that team where you just have no idea what they're doing, but Keppen certainly wasn't one of them. So in the pass category, I'm giving Keppen a 2C. I don't think there's a high-level playmaker here. On one hand, it might have to do with the line mates that he had and the team in general, and he felt that he needed to put a lot more on his back. On the other hand, it might just not be his game. He was a relentless forechecker, and he preferred to have the puck on his own stick so he could drive it up the ice, attack the net himself, and really generate points that way. So while I would like to see him complete more passes on the whole and be a more consistent passer moving up the ice, the things he does really well is usually done when the puck is on his own stick. Next up is the shoot category. Now, Keppen isn't the most fantastic shooter, but he does attack the net quite a lot, and that's really projectable. A lot of players can do a lot of damage by attacking the net relentlessly, and Keppen does that. When he's in open ice, he knows how to find open space and get his shots off quickly, and he did score some goals that way. But his offensive upside comes from when he attacks the net, whether it's a wraparound, or just driving straight into the goaltender, or passing it off to a teammate on another wing. He tries to find different ways to generate offense by attacking the net and driving shots that way. He does have some level of skill, especially relative to his size, so he can create space between him and defenders, but I didn't see that a tremendous amount. If that's something that comes over the next little while and becomes a tool in his toolbox he can pull out, he could be a very dangerous offensive player. I just feel like it's more likely that he's going to be a more relentless attacking winger who's a real menace to handle around the net, especially with the speed that he brings. So in the shoot category, I'm giving him a 2C. I don't think he's going to be a real premier NHL goal scorer one day, but he does have the tools where he is going to score some goals or at least drive some level of offense off of his natural playing style. He can find open space, he can attack the net, he can wrap around the net. It's all a really nice package that I think is going to bode him well, especially with coaching as the years go on. So the way that we wrap up these videos is we look at the best part of a player's game, the good part of a player's game, and the not so good part of a player's game. The best part of Ethan Keppen's game is simple. He has a great frame for playing pro hockey, and he is a relentlessly hard-working winger. He applies tremendous pressure on both forecheckers and defenders at the same time. It's really special to watch, and he was a real leader in that regard on Flint from the games that I saw. He has an underrated skating ability, and there's a nice offensive package that I think is projectable to the next level. Maybe not at a super high level, but if you can get a player like Keppen later on in the draft, say in the 3rd or 4th round, I think you could safely assume that there's a good chance he's an NHL player one day. The good part of his game is that overall I found him just very responsible. He never put himself too far out of position. When he attacked the net, he usually got to the net. He rarely went into positions where he wasn't going to win a puck battle, and he knew how to transition pucks up the ice with safety and control. All of these things go into what I believe would be a very good hockey player that could play on any team that I'm building. He uses his mobility to his advantage to really patrol the middle of the ice to the left wing boards in his own zone, and when pucks are going up the ice, really it's no holds barred. He has enough strength and skill in his skating to really do a lot of damage attacking pucks up the ice. For the not so good part, I didn't find a lot of really glaring weaknesses with his game. The speed is there, the strength is there, but I think that if he's going to be a real premier NHL winger, I think the skill is going to need to take a bit of a step, and the agility is going to need to take a bit of a step as well. His hands were good, but not great, and I think that in the NHL, if you're going to be a big, strong player like he will be, you're going to need to have some level of skills so that you can really get around defenders in multiple different creative ways as opposed to just trying to bulldoze through them. So overall, I'm giving Keppen a 1D. I think people will be surprised with how much I like Ethan Keppen relative to his rank, but I think he's a player that you have to go and watch in isolation to really appreciate. Ignoring everything else that goes on the ice without him being involved in the play with Flint was a really fruitful experience. He plays the right way, and there's a lot to like about his game. His relentless attacking energy is really palpable, and I can imagine that that's the type of energy that bleeds throughout that team. For the metric side of things, Keppen was a huge primary point scorer. If there was an even strength goal scored while he was on the ice during this whole season, he had a goal or a primary assist on 70% of those goals. Of all first-time draft eligibles from the Canadian Hockey League this year, just 9 had 40 even strength primary points or more. Keppen was one of them, and he was the only one who had points on 70% or more of the even strength goals while he was on the ice. If you ask me, players who bring the energy to the game that Keppen does are really hard to find, and they're really easy to play on any team, regardless of their offensive output. I think he has the potential to be a very good offensive attacking winger in the NHL. But with the motor that he has, at the age he is, it's rare to find a player that plays like he does, and I think he's tremendously undervalued in this year's NHL draft. The metrics also say the same thing. If Flint improves, I bet that Keppen will be one of the premier OHL power. If Flint can improve, I can't imagine Keppen doesn't become a premier offensive winger in the OHL at the very least. And he really strikes me as a Connor Brown type of player, except bigger than Connor Brown. There's a tremendous work ethic, he plays the right way, he can attack the net, and he can generate points that way. And Connor Brown was on a really bad Erie Otters team and went in the 6th round, and look at him now. If Ethan Keppen starts slipping through the draft because teams are looking at his plus-minus or Flint as a whole, then there could be the potential for a really good steal here later on in the draft. So that's it for this Scouching report. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons that you see below me so that you never miss another video. If you really liked the video, you could support us on Patreon, where you get access to private chat rooms, spreadsheets for drafted and undrafted NHL prospects, as well as many other goodies. Or you could consider picking up some merchandise at the Scouchware shop. All the links are in the description. So that's all for this one, and we'll see you in the next video.